They told us the files would stay sealed for 50 years. They told us the names were too powerful to be spoken, that the truth was a locked door to which we would never find the key. But in 2024, the seal was finally broken. Thousands of pages of court documents, depositions, and flight logs were dumped into the public domain, revealing a web of power, influence, and depravity that stretches from the halls of Washington, D.C. to the palaces of Europe and the high-tech boardrooms of Silicon Valley. This isn't just a story about one man, Jeffrey Epstein. It is a story about a system, a global architecture of privilege that allowed a predator to operate in plain sight for decades. It is about the sweetheart deal that failed the victims, the private jets that carried the elite into the shadows, and the mysterious structures on a Caribbean island that hold secrets we are only now starting to decode. Today, we go beyond the headlines and the sound bites. We are opening the files, naming the names, and looking at the evidence that was hidden in the open for far too long. Welcome to the unfiltered truth of the Epstein files. To truly understand what these documents represent, you have to understand the man at the center of the storm. Jeffrey Epstein was a mystery even to those who shared his table. He was a college dropout who somehow found himself teaching math at the prestigious Dalton School. Imagine a man with no degree, teaching the children of the world's most powerful elite. This was his first taste of the proximity to power. From there, he made a leap that still puzzles historians, entering Bear Stearns and quickly rising through the ranks. With no formal financial training, he ascended to manage billions for some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet, most notably Leslie Wexner, the titan behind Victoria's Secret. But as the files suggest, Epstein wasn't just a money manager, he was a gatekeeper of secrets. He built a lifestyle meticulously designed to attract the curious, the ambitious, and the powerful. His Manhattan mansion, the largest private residence in the city, served as more than a home. It was a sophisticated trap. Surveillance logs found in the files imply that almost every room was wired for sound and video. In Epstein's world, wealth was common, but information was the ultimate currency. The documents raise a haunting question that the public is still grappling with. Was Epstein a financial genius? Or was he running the most extensive blackmail operation in modern history? When you look at the names in his black book, ranging from former presidents to Nobel Prize-winning scientists, the answer begins to look much darker than anyone dared to imagine. The files take us into the deep, dark heart of his properties. If the Manhattan Mansion was the office, Little St. James was the vault. For years, the world wondered what happened on that 72-acre island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The 2024 documents provide a terrifyingly clear picture. We see transcripts of workers who describe the Great House and the mysterious temple with its blue and white stripes. While early rumors suggested underground tunnels, the court documents focus on a much more grounded horror, the systematic arrival of young women and the departure of famous men. The logs of the island's private ferry and the small planes that landed on the dirt strip are a who's who of the global elite. Testimonies describe an environment where the laws of the outside world simply did not apply. There are mentions of massage rooms that were nothing more than rooms for exploitation, and a staff that was trained to look the other way. The files reveal that the island was equipped with high-grade security and surveillance cameras that were supposedly intended for protection, but survivors claim they were used to document the indiscretions of the guests. But the island wasn't the only site. The documents also shed light on the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, a massive estate where Epstein reportedly intended to carry out strange, pseudo-scientific experiments regarding human seed and eugenics. The files contain mentions of his obsession with transhumanism and his desire to populate a ranch with his own offspring, a detail that sounds like science fiction but is documented in the interviews of those who knew him. Then there was the Palm Beach estate in Florida, the place where the first cracks in the armor appeared. It was here, in 2005, that a local police investigation first uncovered the scale of his operation. The files detail how young girls from local high schools were recruited with the promise of easy money for massages. The documents include the original police reports, the desperate calls from parents, and the internal memos of a justice system that seemed hesitant to move against a man with such high-profile friends. Let's talk about the flight logs of the Lolita Express. This Boeing 727 was not just a plane, it was a mobile crime scene. The 2024 documents have finally unmasked many of the names that were previously redacted. We see the dates, the destinations, and the passengers. We see the names of former President Bill Clinton, who, according to the logs, traveled on the plane multiple times, though he has denied ever visiting the island. We see the names of Prince Andrew, whose relationship with Epstein has been a central focus of the UK media. We see mentions of high-profile actors, scientists like Stephen Hawking, and tech moguls like Bill Gates. The files don't just list the names, they give context to the trips. Some were for philanthropic conferences, others were for private getaways. But the common denominator in all these flights was the presence of young women. The logs show a pattern of travel to places like Slovakia, Morocco, and France, destinations that served as recruitment hubs or hideouts. The 2024 release includes depositions from pilots who describe the atmosphere on these flights as unsettling, noting that the VIP passengers were often separated from the rest of the cabin by heavy curtains. This leads us to the most infuriating chapter of the entire saga, the systemic failure of the justice system and the 2008 sweetheart deal. Jeffrey Epstein was facing federal charges that could have resulted in a life sentence. Instead, he was granted an agreement that allowed him to plead guilty to minor state charges in Florida. He served only 13 months in a private wing of a county jail, with work release privileges that allowed him to leave for 12 hours a day. But the real scandal buried in the latest files is the immunity clause. This single sentence in the deal didn't just protect Epstein, it protected any potential co-conspirators. This effectively stopped the FBI in its tracks for over a decade. The files show that Alexander Acosta, the then U.S. attorney, was under immense pressure to let Epstein off easy. One document mentions that Epstein was above his pay grade and that he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence. While the specific intelligence agency is never named, the implication of high-level protection is etched into every page of the legal records. We also have to talk about the enablers. Jeffrey Epstein did not act alone. He had a circle of fixers and recruiters. Chief among them was Ghislaine Maxwell. The daughter of a disgraced media tycoon, Maxwell provided the social shampoo that Epstein needed to enter the highest circles of British and American society. The files describe her as the lady of the house who managed the logistics of the operation. Depositions from survivors like Virginia Giuffre paint a picture of Maxwell as a cold, calculating figure who groomed victims by gaining their trust. The documents include emails between Epstein and Maxwell that show a partnership of mutual dependence. They discussed everything from the purchase of properties to the management of specific girls. Beyond Maxwell, the files mention names like Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, and Leslie Groff, women who served as Epstein's assistants and are described in the documents as being integral to the daily operation of his network. Many of these women have never been charged, and the 2024 files have renewed the public's demand for their accountability. The financial web is another layer that the files peel back. How does a man with no visible source of income maintain multiple mansions and a private jet? The unsealed records show his deep ties to JP Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank. For years, these banks ignored red flags. The files include internal bank emails that discuss the reputational risk of keeping Epstein as a client, yet they continued to move his money until long after his first conviction. We see how Epstein used his wealth to buy legitimacy. He didn't just give money to charities, he gave money to individuals who could protect him. He donated millions to MIT and Harvard, and the files include letters of gratitude from university presidents who were eager to stay in his good graces. This was social engineering at its most cynical, using the veneer of academia to mask the stench of his crimes. The files even document his attempts to win a Nobel Prize by funding specific researchers, showing the depth of his delusion and the height of his ambition. As the narrative moves into the testimonies of the survivors, the tone of the documents changes from legalistic to heartbreaking. We read the words of Virginia Giuffre, who has become the face of the fight for justice. Her deposition is a tour de force of courage. She names the people she was allegedly directed to meet, including Prince Andrew and the lawyer Alan Dershowitz. The files contain the cross-examinations where lawyers tried to discredit her, questioning her memory and her motives. But the sheer volume of corroborating evidence in the files, the flight logs, the photos, and the testimonies of other victims, makes her story impossible to ignore. We also find the testimony of Johanna Sjoberg, who describes being at Epstein's Manhattan mansion when high-profile guests would visit. Her account of a specific interaction involving a puppet and Prince Andrew became a global headline, and the unsealed files provide the full, unedited transcript of that moment. These aren't just stories. They are sworn testimonies that have been hidden behind redaction bars for years. The 2024 dump also gives us a closer look at the J. Doe files. For years, these individuals fought to keep their names secret. Some were victims who wanted privacy, while others were powerful men who wanted to avoid scandal. The unsealing of these names has been a seismic event. We see the names of former governors, international businessmen, and world-renowned scientists. The files show that Epstein's influence wasn't just in the U.S., it was truly global. There are mentions of meetings in Morocco with members of the Saudi royal family and discussions about business deals in Israel. The documents paint a picture of a man who was obsessed with being at the center of the world's power structures and who used his island and his plane as the bait to draw people into his orbit. The question of Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019 is a cloud that hangs over the entire file. While the official medical examiner's report ruled it a suicide, the documents unsealed in 2024 provide a disturbing look at the failures of the Metropolitan Correctional Center. We read about the 2 guards who were supposed to be checking on him every 30 minutes, but were instead sleeping and surfing the internet. We read about the malfunctioning cameras in the hallway outside his cell. We read about the transfer of his cellmate just 1 day before his death, leaving him alone in a high-risk unit. The files don't provide a smoking gun for a murder conspiracy, but they document a level of negligence so extreme that it borders on the intentional. For the victims, his death was a final theft. He robbed them of the chance to see him face justice in a courtroom. The files show the aftermath of his death, the scramble to secure his assets, and the immediate efforts by his associates to distance themselves from his name. In the final sections of the documents, we see the ongoing efforts by the U.S. Virgin Islands government to hold the enablers accountable. The lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase, which was settled for hundreds of millions of dollars, is documented in detail. We see the evidence that the bank knew about Epstein's human trafficking operation as early as 2006, but chose to keep him as a client because he brought in high-net-worth individuals. This is the real knowledge buried in the files. The realization that Epstein wasn't just one bad actor. He was a part of an ecosystem where banks, law firms, and media companies all played a role in maintaining the silence. The files include emails from media executives who killed stories about Epstein in the mid-2000s, showing how his influence reached even into the rooms where news is made. The legacy of the Epstein files is not just a list of names, it is a warning. It is a warning about what happens when wealth is allowed to bypass the law. It is a warning about the vulnerability of children in a world where power is concentrated in the hands of a few. The 2024 release is a victory for transparency, but as the documents show, there are still thousands of pages that remain classified. There are names we still don't know and secrets that are still buried. The survivors have said that they will not stop until every page is unsealed. They have turned their trauma into a crusade for the truth, and these files are their greatest weapon. As we close the final pages of this 2024 dump, we realize that the story of Jeffrey Epstein didn't end with his death. It is a story that is still being written, one unsealed document at a time. The world is finally looking at the truth, And the truth is something that no amount of money or power can hide forever. This is the document of our times, a map of the shadows where the powerful thought they were safe. But today, the light is on, and the shadows are disappearing. Justice is a long road, but the Epstein files prove that it is a road that eventually leads to the truth. We see the names, we see the faces, and we hear the voices of those who were silenced for too long. The 2024 documents are the final piece of a puzzle that has taken 20 years to assemble. What we do with this information is up to us. We can choose to look away, or we can choose to demand that the systems that protected Epstein are dismantled. The files are not just a record of the past, they are a call to action for the future. No one is above the law, no one is untouchable. And the truth, once it is out, can never be put back into the vault. This is the end of the beginning. The files are open, and the world will never be the same again.